Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Cerebral Palsy and Fitness Podcast. I'm here with Eric Dagati, who is a personal trainer with 20 years plus experience in training professional athletes and people in our daily lives. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me, David.
So, to kind of start out the podcast, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into fitness, and how you've developed this program to where you've trained professional athletes, and what kind of exercise routines do you incorporate with those individuals?
Okay. Well, a lot of stuff to cover there. So, going on year number 25 in 2023 of doing this. Started out just as a personal trainer and kind of working my way through the ranks. I was a um, amateur competitive bodybuilder a million years ago, and kind of that, that was one of my drivers, and said, okay, I'll see if I can make my way in fitness as a trainer. And had some early success, and some of that wasn't by luck. It was by just a lot of hard work, and from there created a lot of different opportunities, and saw a lot of the doors that fitness can open. I saw it a lot more than what it was at the time. Late 90s, it was, hey, a personal trainer was just kind of I joke, it was a rent a friend, where it was just, it was like, I'm going to just kind of pay somebody for an hour to show me
Yeah.
some exercises. And usually those people knew just a little bit more than the people that were training. And so it was kind of transactional. It wasn't really anything that was seen to be much of, other than that I'm just going to get paid dollars for hours, and I just do training sessions and show exercises. But then I saw that there was a little bit more to it, and really got into digging a little bit deeper into finding out more about people, whether it was doing deeper evaluations on how they move or how they perform, or finding just more about kind of what made them tick, and their habits and their goals, and their backgrounds and those sorts of things, and really kind of started to become known as the trainer that worked with people that everybody else couldn't figure out. And that's kind of led into a lot of different pathways, whether it's been working with the people who I've gone to every doctor and they can't figure out my back pain or whatever, or I have this situation and the doctors have told me just deal with it. But I don't want to deal with it. I want to be able to be fit and robust, and I know I can
Right,
get more out of myself. And can you help me in doing that? And then,
right.
you take that to people who get paid to use their bodies, and that's athletes at the highest level. And fortunate enough to work with athletes from multiple different professional sports, and all the way down to the high school level. So it's been a lot of different things. And in terms of what we do with each of them, it's really depends on what they need. So sometimes the MLB baseball player is doing a similar exercise program to the, you know, um, a weekend warrior, because maybe they both have similar needs in terms of their mobility and their movement and so forth, but they're also going out to much higher demand. So they may start looking the same, but they're not going to end up looking the same.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that because you think that age also plays a factor in our fitness. As we get older, you might think that you might be able to lift, 1,000. I mean, just to put a number out there, like 1,000 pounds, you might be able to deadlift that. And then when you get older, you're like, man, I can't do this anymore. Like for me, I've been in fitness for 17, 18 years, and I used to do weightlifting and all kinds of stuff with with my disability, and people were impressed. And then one day I had somebody come up to me and say, quality is better than quantity. And I realized that the hard way, because I was lifting one day, and I took out my back in the middle of a set. And luckily I had a friend with me. So I literally like try to hunch over to my friend, try to walk as good as I can, because because I walk with the cane, and I hunch over and I walk over to him, and he's like, "You look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. What happened?" He's like, "Well, I was doing rows, and I went and rode wrong for one set. My back just went out, and I'm like, you know what? This is a sign that I need to slow down. I need to lower the weight, and do more reps, and realize that even though I'm 31 that I'm going to get older, that my fitness routine will change, that my habits will change, and go from there.
So when people get hurt working out, and unfortunately, you're not the only one. There's a high instances of people getting injured while they're working out. Which, when you take a step back from all of it, David, it's kind of silly, right? Your whole
Yeah,
purpose of why you work out is to be healthier and more robust and more resilient. And the very thing that you're doing is actually hurting you, which has always kind of been kind of crazy to me. So
yeah,
the first thing we look at is when someone gets hurt working out, I say it usually comes down to one of three reasons or a combination. One is a movement competency issue, meaning, let's say if you got somebody who can't even touch your toes, right? But then they're trying to deadlift a bar from the ground. They probably can't even get into the positions and postures to do it right if they wanted to. So you can have the greatest, deadlifting coach in the world standing there. If they can't even get into position to grip the bar right, set their feet right, those sorts of things, it's just setting up for disaster. So you have to be able to move well enough to do
yes,
the exercises that you're asking to do. The second thing is you have to have a certain amount of capacity. And that's kind of what you were alluded to before. Like, I may have perfect form with 200 pounds, but when I go to 225, my form goes away
struggle.
because I can't maintain that. And so that's just a capacity issue, where I'm trying to do too much load, or maybe my form was perfect on the first three sets. It's that fourth set when I got tired, that's what got me. Or maybe normally I could do that weight, but I had a lousy night's sleep the night before and I have terrible recovery, and that I couldn't handle that. Or I usually do it at the beginning of my workout, but now I'm fatigued and now that's an issue. So that's a capacity issue. Or the third thing is exercise skill. You just don't know what you're doing. I work with high school kids a lot, and walk into any high school weight room and it's a nightmare of
Ugh,
kids just trying to because they want to, max out every single time they lift.
yeah.
And first of all, you don't have enough exercise skill to even get an accurate max. And so you need to actually learn how to execute exercises. And that's another important thing as well. So it's one of those three things is what's going to get you if you're going to get hurt in the weight room. You could still get hurt with light weights. You can
Oh yeah.
still move really well and still get hurt. You could be really strong and still get hurt. You just have to make sure all those three things are checked as you go to kind of execute a program.
All right. As you mentioned, when you mentioned high schoolers, I work with middle schoolers and they're the same way. And it's more of a,
Same
if you
way,
think
just worse.
it's worse, and then it's more of an ego thing of, I could lift more than you, so I'm gonna put 75 pounds and try to lift it. And now you see him struggling. You're like, dude, keep your ego out of the class and do what you need to do correctly.
So what I try to do with that is they have to kind of earn their stripes in the programming, and having baselines and guidelines kind of helps with that. So, like, I'll give you an example that's I refer to quite a bit is with pull-ups and chin-ups, right? Awesome exercise, but there has to be some sort of learning curve. If not, they're just kind of swinging from a bar and it's just ugly, and they can end
Yeah.
up really putting a lot of stress on their shoulders, neck, and everything. So here's the progression. You have to be able to do a straight arm hang, basically palms facing forward, arms locked out, straight arm hang for a minimum of 60 seconds. Okay. So if you can't do that, guess what you do? You keep doing a straight arm hang until you can. Um, as well as a bunch of other things, but that's kind of the progression. Once you can do that, well, then now you're going to do a bent arm hang, which is basically the top of a chin up, just palms facing you. You got to be able to do that for 30 seconds. Now, if you can do both of those, then I'll let you start to introduce chin ups. But if you haven't done those, you're not allowed to do chin ups. So it's not that I
Yeah.
don't like you or it's a bad exercise. That's what you kind of earn your stripes. So think of it almost like martial arts, that I don't get to walk into the dojo day one and spar with the black belts. I have to earn my stripes to get there. And that's the same
Right.
thing it should be when you are trying to acquire the skill of strength, that you need to work through certain things. You need to be able to check certain boxes first. So that's how I have the progression to say, okay, you can lift as much as you can control, but you have to be able to do these things first.
Right. It's take it step by step, take it slowly, listen to what your coaches are saying, what advice they're giving you, because it might help you in the long run. It's not just you do it and you do it yourself. You gotta, if you have somebody that's willing to train you, you know take advantage of it. right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I saw that you've trained clients on base. Is it like military that you've trained?
So yes and no. Okay, so on base, which you're probably seeing there in my bio, on
Yeah.
base university is a it's a certification specific to training baseball and softball athletes. So
Okay, cool.
and so what that is I'm on the advisory board for that, where it's a way to create physical connections, what they call the body swing connection, or the so we look at the swing, the hitter swing, and say there's certain connections to say if a hitter has a flaw in their swing, is it a physical reason why that's there, and then how do we detect and correct that? That's what the on base is. But to answer your question, yes, I've had the good fortune in as being a lead instructor for functional movement systems. I've taught workshops on multiple military bases,
That's
and
awesome.
so I've had the good fortune of working with two of the staffs that work with the SEAL teams. Gotten to be at Camp Lejeune, gotten to be at Norfolk, a bunch of different bases that I've gotten to teach workshops at, and it's always puts me in awe of what our military does for us, and you know who and what those people are.
Hey, it's truly when you get something like that, it's truly a privilege because you get to see how much you do firsthand, but then also how thankful they are that you took the time to help train them and get ready for combat essentially, just
And
physically.
when you look, when you talk about professional athletes, when you talk about special forces, they're investing as much money into a special forces soldier as they are an NFL athlete. And what they have to do to prepare on all different aspects of that is just incredible. And so, you know, my absolutely minuscule part of that was helping them create kind of processes to keep them healthier during the training component. It takes grueling training to be prepared to do the things that they do. And so to be able to do that, they want to look for mechanisms to try to minimize the injuries in training, because that was one of the issues that they had is that they were having people break down, not doing, you know, military stuff, but actually breaking down training to do military stuff, which
Oh
kind of goes
no.
back to our conversation from before, is that the training should fortify you, not break you down.
Oh yeah, that's one thing. I guess I didn't start really training until I was like 14, until I was like 14, 15. And then that was like midway through my sporting career because I did football, baseball, and I'm a former three-time state champion cyclist, and I started training like way like after. And then I noticed how, physically I started feeling better. And then coming out of high school, I was scouted by the Paralympic Committee in Tampa, the Paralympics, because they had seen tapes of me how good I was, on the bike. And I mean, I went undefeated for 3.5 years. No one in the state of Florida could essentially, beat me. And eventually my fourth year I was injured and I made it to state, but didn't medal. So I said, I went through and then took a 5-year hiatus, came back, and they're still wanting me to compete, at the professional level. But then I said, you know what? My body says I can't do this anymore, physically. And I said, your mind lasts forever, but your body doesn't. So might as well pursue something else that you enjoy and walk away when you can, because I was offered a six-figure contract, sponsorships, everything, and I turned it down. But I don't regret it.
That's a pretty remarkable career.
Yep. Um, and then do you have any like advice for those like myself who have physical disabilities, or have you dabbled with people with disabilities when it comes to fitness?
I actually have, and I've worked with multiple people with CP and other people with neurological disorders or paralysis, things like that. And the biggest thing is really the starting point is the same. The starting point is, let's see what you can do and let's see what you can't do. Now, if there's some things that you can't do that are beyond our control, then we don't necessarily worry about those. We just factor those in. and then let's see and hammer down what we can do. And so that's the first thing. And so each person is a little bit unique. So you take someone like yourself who's got a very strong athletic background. That's a little bit different than the person who gets diagnosed in their 40s and now comes to me who really doesn't have any exercise history. So each case is a little bit unique. But then focusing on what you can do is really the big thing, because the more you fortify that, what you find is that it starts to bring back some of those things that you used to not be able to do, to certain extents. The other thing is kind of learning how we move in the first place is really important in working with the neurological system, in that we go through this what they call the neurological neurodevelopmental sequence. Okay, so I always talk when I teach workshops on movement, as I say, by a show of hands, who here had a movement coach when they were a child that taught you how to basically roll over and crawl and stand and walk and so forth? And everybody kind of looks at each other and smiles. And I say, okay, well, because you didn't need one, right? Because what happens is we have our hardware, that's our muscles, our joints, our bones, that's the stuff you see in the mirror. And then the software is what makes that go. Like muscles that in and of themselves are just, I joke, they're kind of stupid. If you just took your bicep out, lay it on a table, it's not going to do anything. But if you hook up a car battery to it, it'll contract because it's going on these electrical impulses that are fed through our nervous system, right? Whether it's consciously, like I'm going to throw you a ball, Dave, or reflexively as you throw a ball to me and I have to react. Now with that, those impulses are based on motor programs that we have, again, either consciously or reflexively, just like and we have certain ones that are built into our software that are kind of like the operating system of the body that we just kind of innately develop as we go through our first 24 months of life. So you start with eye tracking, and then you go to lift your head, and then you go to kind of press up off the ground, and then you kind of scoot forward, and then you start to realize that you can use opposite arm and leg, and you start to develop those reciprocal patterns when you crawl, and then you go from there up into kneeling postures, and then eventually from kneeling transitioning to standing, and then standing to walking. And then once we get to there, then we can learn to carry and jump and do those sorts of things. So all this is happening during your first 24 months. And we have, just like I talked about, kind of guidelines and checkpoints. You have those where your pediatrician says, okay, are they sitting up on their own? Are they doing these things on their own? Just to know if you're on track on that neurodevelopmental sequence. Now, the problem is after our first 24 months, nobody cares about it anymore. Nobody asks it and checks back. And we spend I always joke, the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years screwing that beautiful, graceful movement up. And so when someone comes in and they don't move well for whatever reason, we always go back to that neural developmental sequence and say, okay, first thing we want to do is we want to regain any mobility that's been lost. Okay. And so where is most of our mobility lost? It's doing what we're doing right now, sitting in a chair and a desk. And so that'll start to shorten some tissues and change your posture and change your habits of kind of how you hold up your body. You start to hang on your joints a little bit. And so we have to kind of rebuild some of that mobility so you have access to full ranges of motion where you need to. Okay. And the common areas are your ankles, your hips, and your torso, your rib cage and upper back. Now, once we regain that mobility, we have to start teaching what to do with that. And we start by going through that sequence. So we'll start, and a lot of these patterns are extremely helpful in regaining neurological control. So starting with basic rolling patterns, being able to roll from your back to your stomach to your back, and doing it in specific sequences is the first place we start. And then from there, we're going to go into hands and knees and what we call a quadruped position, and start to do some different movements and challenges there. And then from there, we go up into kneeling positions, and then finally up into standing. But if you look at most rehabilitative care, it's one extreme or the other. You're laying on a treatment table doing some clamshell exercises, or a strap exercise or something like that on your back where no gravity is involved, and you jump right from there to now we're going to put you on your feet, and now we're going to have you either walk with assistance or do some kind of standing balance exercise. And you're skipping so many steps in between there. And so because of that, people struggle. And so what we found is that you can get tremendous results um, by going through that, kind of going back through those same stages we did as toddlers to help regain movement. And then from there, and then it's just adding some capacities to those things, and getting stronger. And you can do that all while you're training your movement. So that's kind of the approach we take when we have anybody, and then especially with people who have specific neurological challenges, is take them through that sequence. It's going to take a little bit longer than it may take someone who doesn't, but that's going to be the biggest impact that I've found in that type of training.
Oh man, have I got to tell you a story about um a table and the clamshells? Man, I did physical therapy for years until I was uh 18, 19, and then I went
Mm-hmm.
back into it when I was in my mid 20s. And then uh I had done, I went in to get physical therapy again, happy as can be because I was gonna get, treatment. Went there for 6 weeks thinking, okay, we did all the therapy. I'm gonna come back, for however long I can. One day I show up and they give me a piece of paper and they're like, here, do these at home. And then they charge me for like $200 just for these for 6 weeks of therapy. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right and it doesn't make sense because physical therapy for someone like myself who has a disability is a necessity, and for you to charge like this outrageous amount of money for 6 weeks, it's like, especially when there's somebody, I mean, I'm not saying everybody can afford it, but especially when somebody can't afford it, it's like, right. And then not only that, but you mentioned how it's just basic stuff. It's not anything that'll really cause, major improvement. So that's my story on it. So then that's
Yeah,
when I
and
transitioned to a
unfortunately,
trainer.
that story is not uncommon. As that industry has become more and more corporately driven, and they're unfortunately strapped to have to crank through a certain number of patients in order to kind of pay the bills. And so it's an unfortunate situation, but there are on the flip side, some really good therapists who can absolutely impact lives. And the one story that I would share with you is a guy that I became friendly with, who was an attendee at one of my courses, who we've since become friends, told an amazing story. Guy by the name of Steve Carnes, and he was speaking of special forces. He was a special forces um, in England, and so he got to the point where he was actually training the training upcoming cadets. And so one of the things he found is he found that there was lots of injuries in their training, and so he kind of found our system, and that's how he became aware of it. Well, fast forward, he ends up having a major brain injury and has to
Wow.
get and ends up needing extensive extensive 20-hour surgery. And usually, the prognosis after that is, if you live through it, that you may walk with assistance at some point down the road. And he was in the hospital, and he said, they started his rehab, and the first thing they started doing was having him walk, with the parallel bars with assistance. And he said, you know what, I've learned kind of what we talked about before with that neural developmental sequence. This doesn't make sense. This just doesn't work for me. So he actually checked himself out of the hospital and went home, and he drove his own rehab, doing a lot of things we talked about, where he would practice rolling, he would practice crawling. He would practice getting up into kneeling positions, and he would fall down and he'd struggle. And he actually he kind of did a chronological video of all of this process happening. That's absolutely awe
Wow.
inspiring. That you see at the end, where he's climbing mountains, he's working out, he's doing all these things, to where he got back to where, when he walks in the room now, you would never know he had that injury. And it's absolutely inspiring. And now he actually speaks at conferences on neurological injuries, and working with people with impairments. And he actually consults and with and coaches people around the world in it. And so he was a great inspiration to kind of show people what the capacities are, because unfortunately, a lot of times people are left saying, hey, that's as good as you're going to get, deal with it, right? Just
Yeah.
create coping strategies to deal with that. And you know, I would hope more and more people, and the people that listen to this with you, Dave, don't settle for that. Please don't.
Yeah, I
You
don't.
know, I had the, you know, another guy that I had worked with, um, Bob, he was in a motorcycle accident, and the motorcycle didn't get him. It's he had a bacteria that got into his spine while he was in the hospital and shut him down from basically the waist down, and so he was in a
Wow.
wheelchair. Came into me, and I was young as a trainer at the time. I didn't know a lot of things I knew now. I wish I did. And I didn't know what to do with him, quite frankly. And it was real. It took me and his wife to get him just on a seated chest press machine. And I only put him on that because it had a seatbelt on it. I didn't know what else to do. And so I just, you know, I just dove into the books and tried to learn as much as I can with him and did whatever we could. And I worked with him for a couple of years, and he came a long way to where we were doing some stuff where we were doing a hybrid of both, but he could kind of walk pretty well without a walker, and we got a little bit unassisted, and um, you know, he's progressing well. And one day his wife comes in, and she's like, "Did he tell you what he did this weekend?" And I said, "No." And he was a real character, this guy. So I'm like, "What did you do? You got in trouble again. You did something stupid, didn't you?" And she goes, "No." And she starts crying. And I said, "What happened?" He said he walked his daughter down the aisle with a walker.
No way.
And I was like, wow. She said that the church doors open up and everybody just burst into tears. And it was, to this day, it still chokes me up because it just showed like he didn't settle for that. His whole thing to me was, because I told him flat out, I said, I'm like, Bob, I have no business working with you. I don't know what I'm doing here. You need to find somebody else. He's like, look, physical therapy, the insurance company cut off my physical therapy. So they basically said it's either I go home and rot, or I'm going to get whatever your best is. So whatever your best is what I'll take. So I said, all right. And so I had an obligation then to give my whatever my best could be, to get him to do whatever the best he could be. So, you know, I, again, don't kind of settle for, this is it, because it doesn't, you know, I can't promise you that you'll be
It's not.
signing, you know, pro contracts anytime soon, but you can certainly, it's amazing what you can do, if you apply, challenge in the right way. If you apply and exercise being this magical thing that can do so much for so many people in so many ways.
Yeah, I'm wow, that's incredible for me to give you a little bit about my background. I'm actually a spastic quad. I was never supposed to walk at all. And until the age of 8, I was confined to a wheelchair, and doctors told my parents, "Oh, he's never gonna walk, never gonna live a normal life, never gonna be successful." Thankfully, with their help, I was able to overcome a lot of obstacles, through the education system, and then uh, physically, I had so many challenges with being able to walk and stuff, and losing my mom at a young age. Then you know, uh, my mom's dream was for me to walk. I began walking at the age of 8, took my first steps inside a Foot Locker in Puerto Rico, without my parents knowing. My stepmom and my dad were like somewhere else. I got up out of the chair, took maybe 2 3 steps, and fell. My mom looks over and she's like, "Where's David at?" And she looks at me on the floor. She's like, "Did you walk up?" And she couldn't believe it at first. She's like, he walked all the way, a couple paces, and they couldn't believe it. That after doctors had said I wouldn't be able to walk. And then I finished all my schooling, went to UCF. I graduated with my bachelor's degree. On that day, I remember looking at the mirror and said, "You did it." And then going to the arena, and they had asked me, "Do you want to take the ramp or do you want to take the stairs?" And I was 25 at the. I was 24, turning 25 that weekend, Mother's Day weekend. And I told them, I waited 17 long years to be able to walk those stairs, and I'm gonna walk those stairs. So I took the rail, went up the stairs, up the stage, and you could hear, everybody was clapping, happy and stuff beforehand. It got really quiet, and I'm thinking to myself, nobody's gonna cheer, nobody's going to acknowledge. If I can hear at least my family, it'd be great. That's the only people I want to hear. And I took the cane, and I remember lifting it up, and that place erupted. I mean, you're talking about 10,000 people. That place was loud, and it was loud for about 5 minutes. I had to stop the commencement because it was so emotional, and you could see people, just crying, and it was just a journey that it was a fight to get up there. I was supposed to go to college. I wasn't supposed to amount to anything, and here I am. I did it. And that's to from losing my mom to there and to now. It just shows, if, like you said, if you keep working at it and you don't quit, there is no quit in my vocabulary. Just like in your clients, there is no quit in them. They're willing to do anything they can to succeed in fitness and in life.
That's so awesome. That's incredible. Kudos to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So um yeah, man, it's incredible what we do, like life-changing things in fitness. And uh I wanted to, I guess, ask you, what's been the most rewarding thing about being a personal trainer to you?
It's cool to have been to a lot of the places that I've been to in teaching. So it's kind of a couple sides to it. On the teaching side, being able to kind of teach other trainers and going around the world, being able to do that, experiencing different cultures and meeting people all over that have, as I said, now guys like Steve, who are a friend, who are in England, have friends in Argentina, to things around the world, people that I've been able to make connections with, that this has allowed me to do. That is one thing that I absolutely am grateful for. And the other thing is the impact, that I've been able to have in working with athletes, especially younger kids, and seeing the difference that they can tell, that I just always kind of hope they can tell, but they can tell when I get a text, saying, I just signed my letter of intent for college. Thank you for everything you did to
Wow.
help me be able to be here. Those sorts of things. The state championships, the Super Bowl, the that kind of stuff is obviously very, very cool to be around. But those connections to where you've made some level of impact that affected someone's life is really the coolest thing of that. And sometimes it's stuff that you don't even realize. I'll tell um, tell a story to a team about something and not realize the impact it had, and have a kid come up to me 3 years later and said, I remember my freshman year you told this story, and that's what really made me want to be part of this program. So you don't realize the impact that you can have. And if you just reduce it to showing exercises, going back full circle to what we talked about at the beginning, then it's just kind of a mundane transactional thing as opposed to a transformational thing.
Yeah, it's like I said, it is a good feeling seeing, your kids come back around and thank you for what you do. I get that often. I used to serve with AmeriCorps as a teaching assistant. And every year I work with students, and then I had students that were very, didn't want to listen to me, didn't want anything to do with me. And then 3 years later, they come back and they'll be like, you know what, Mister, you're right. I should have listened to you from the get-go. I'm like, that's the reason I always try to mentor you and always try to talk to you, is because I want you to succeed. I don't want you to fail. And this particular student in general, he was like going down a dark path. Like, his grades weren't good. He was just getting into trouble, into crime and stuff. And then I'm like, if you don't turn your life around, it's gonna get a lot worse. And you're talking about wanting to do basketball, football, all these things, but if you're doing that kind of stuff, like, you won't make it anywhere. And then through 2 years later, he's like, he came to visit. He opened the door to me. He's like, Mr. Day, you remember me? I'm like, yeah, I remember you. He's like, I got a full ride scholarship to college. I got my own car and I got my life set thanks to you, because you were there for me when I wasn't listening to you, and I should have listened to you from the beginning. So that's and now as a youth advocate, I do the same thing, except I'm more of like focusing on their life skills and building their self-esteem and their image. So when they get out of middle school and go through high school and through life, they're set. They have skills that they can use to help better the world.
That's exceptional. And that's one of the things that is fitness is a very cool vehicle for is if you take a step back from all of it. Like I just started with a new group the other night, and I said, first question is this: how does exercise work? And they all kind of like looked around and said, all right, the basic concept of this is that we're going to challenge you, and your body's going to go, oh my God, I don't know what you just did. But if you're going to keep challenging me like that, I'm going to have to get better. And so if you lift heavy things, your body will respond by maybe adding a little more muscle or getting more neurologically efficient so it can be stronger. If you go run or cycle a long distance, you'll create more cardiovascular and respiratory adaptations. So it's this idea of challenge. And I say, for this to work, you need to be two things. You need to be challenged. You need to be successful. So if we're going to lift a weight, we're going to go do a set of bench press, and we can lift 200 pounds for 5 reps. And that's what you're supposed to be doing. Then if we lift 100, you'll be really successful. You just won't be really challenged. I don't know if you'll get better at it, but you won't necessarily get stronger. Then if I put 300, well, you'll be really challenged. You just won't be successful. You're going to get stuck underneath the bar. So we have to find that point just beyond the edge of your capabilities to push you a little bit more. So maybe we add 5 to where you might have to struggle to get that last repetition, and that's okay. And then what that ends up becoming a metaphor for is a lot of things that you go up to is that everything that you want to accomplish, great, all the great things you've done were outside of your comfort zone. And I tell, when I talk to a team, it's, whether it's lifting that weight or whether it's applying for the job that you want, asking out the prettiest girl in the school, whether all those things are outside of your comfort zone, but that's where all the great rewards are. And so fitness is a vehicle to teach you that. If it's just about, hey, I want to do an exercise and feel my muscles burn, then you're really short-sighting what you can get out of it. It's about overcoming challenge and being able to get outside your comfort zone and get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right. And then how do you feel about I guess a lot of these this generation, a lot of these kids, they see a lot of these commercials with like supplements and pre-workouts and things like that. How do you feel about them using it when they go to work out? I mean, just anybody in general.
So the basic conversation with that is a supplement by definition supplements a good diet. A supplement doesn't replace a bad diet. So I got a great analogy from one of my mentors early on was Paul Chek, and he used an analogy of golden nails, right? And what he means by that is if we're going to build a house, right, Dave, here's the deal: is that you're going to get the nails, and I'm going to buy the wood, right? So you go out and buy these top-notch golden nails, so the best nails that you can buy. But I go in the woods and I get old scrap, rotted, wet wood to build the house with. Your golden nails don't really matter anymore. You don't need that good of a nail when you have lousy wood. Well, the wood is analogous to the food you eat. The nails are the supplements. So you can have great supplements, but if your diet's not right, then you're to be crass, you're literally paying your money away.
Yeah, pretty
You're
much.
not getting anything out of it. Now, if you have a really good diet, that may make a difference. And most times research shows the supplement may at best make a 5 to 10% difference. So that's the next question is, are you 5 to 10% away from being what you need to be? If you're in the Olympics, a tenth of a second may be the difference between you being a gold medalist and not making the top 10, right? So that may make a difference. If you're a high school sophomore who doesn't sleep right, who has a very poor diet, who doesn't train consistently or all that hard, that supplement's not going to make a 1% difference with what you're doing. And it's just literally a waste of money. So it's relative to the individual if that supplement's going to even make an impact. And then the second part of that is that we have to make sure it's even safe. There was a deal made with the government back in the 90s that basically with the supplement companies that said, look, you aren't going to have much oversight, right? And so you and I could go and make Eric and Dave's, workout mix, pre-workout in the kitchen sink and sell it. The only thing is, the deal is you can't patent it. And that was kind of the deal back and forth. It's drug companies. Drug companies can spend a ton of money on research and quality control because they can have a patent, that they can make their money back for that period of time until the patent runs out. Well, they don't have that with supplements. We can go buy whatever the most popular supplement is off the shelf, take it to a lab, figure out what's in it, and then we'll just recreate it ourselves, maybe change one element of it so it's our specific, private brand, and then go sell it. And there's very little oversight with that. Then you get it and then it gets to the store, and who's selling it to you in the store? It's some kid who's got a part-time job who, he could have just as easily been working at the Gap or working at, the local
Right.
deli, but he happens to be now working at the vitamin store. And now you're putting your trust of your health in that kid's hand, and he doesn't know what's safe, what's not safe. There's the quality control within these supplements is sometimes what you think you're getting in there is not in there. Sometimes what you think you're not getting in there is in there. So it can be a little bit tricky that you just kind of go in and buy whatever's on the shelf and cross your fingers. So you have to be a smart consumer, and
Very
you also have to
cautious.
be prepared. You have to be prepared if you're going to take them. That's not to say there's not any that don't have benefit. They could have tremendous benefit, but those are the two boxes you have to check.
Yeah, I used to take them often, and then I realized, a healthier diet is better than taking a pre-workout, because if you get enough sleep, if you eat well, then you don't necessarily need a pre-workout.
Most of the times, pre-workout is just a stimulant. And then why do you need a stimulant? Because, like you said, because you eat poorly and you don't sleep well. So your best pre-workout is a good night's sleep.
Yeah, because I used to have them, and then I realized that there are sometimes I would take them and I'd have these side effects, and I'm like, I don't like this. So I just scrapped it. Like the first one I took, I used to take C4, and I would get headaches like horribly. And then I had like the protein powder, the pre-workout. So one day I was like, if I'm getting headaches, this is not good. So I threw it all out, and I'm like, never again. Because pre-workout is not for everybody.
Yeah, and like I said, those are really got to qualify. Is it going to even matter? Is it going to really make that much of a difference? And then two is there what it says on this bottle, even in this bottle, and what's the quality of this product? Is your two biggest things with supplements.
Oh, well, Eric, it's been a whole lot of fun today having you on. Like, we've had conversations about your fitness techniques, and and your some of your best stories about your clients, and just you in general, what you've done so much for the fitness community in general. It's been very admirable. Like, I commend you for it.
Well, I would say the same back to you. Your stories are definitely an inspiration. It was a pleasure to hear it and get to be a part of it.
Is there any way, I guess the listeners can kind of contact you if they're looking to start their own routine, or if they want to, I guess, consult with you at some point?
Yeah. So the easiest place to get me is just through my website, which is just my name, Eric Dagati, EricDagati.com. And there's a couple things on there. If you just have some simple questions, these forums are great, but we can't interact sometimes with people who may hear it, a week from now or a year from now. So if you have a question on there, there's something called Ask Eric. You ask a question and it'll get sent to my email, and I'll get back to you with hopefully an answer, or if not, where you might be able to find one. And then for people who want to work with me, I actually have an app so I can work with people
Oh, sweet.
not only in person but virtually, where I can deliver programs on there. And then as part of my project with teaching trainers, I have a course called Principles of Program Design, which teaches trainers and coaches and so forth how to design training programs. And then to support that, I started my own podcast with my partner about 6 months ago, and we've got about 25 episodes in, and we have guests from all
Nice.
over the fitness industry on there
Sweet.
each week. So
That's awesome, man. And yeah, and all these things will be in the show notes, so that way you guys have access to it. And about the app, is it on Android, iTunes? Is it in both?
It's in both. Yep.
Both, okay.
And, yep.
And Eric, thank you for being on, man. I'm excited. I'm definitely going to check out the website to see if I can find things that I can incorporate myself because I'm always looking to reinvent myself physically. And I hope if everybody wants to listen to this episode, it'll be on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and every other podcasting outlet out there. And Eric, I hope you have a great one. Thank you for being on again and for giving us your advice and expertise.
Thank
And
you. Keep doing what you're doing, Dave. You're doing great.
thank you, man. And until next time, you guys, be safe out there.